All right, so I saw some movies. I had a 4-movie day, 3 movies in theaters and 1 when we got back. And I'm going to review all 4 of them. 3 of them are new movies, 1 of them is an old movie. Let's just go in the order that I saw them in. I saw Plane, starring Gerard Butler. Shay and I used to say he had a nice gird bird, which meant Gerard beard. And I don't know why we said that. Sometimes we would look at someone who has a beard like Gerard Butler and we'd say, that's a nice gird bird. So I wasn't sure what to expect from this movie because I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know that it was coming out until I saw some ads on Twitter. And I was like, Plane? That's the title of the movie, Plane? You're really going to title your movie Plane? After watching it, I still kind of feel the same way about the title. Most of it doesn't take place on a plane. Most of it is on an island, kind of like Friday the 13th, Jason Takes Manhattan is mostly Jason on a boat. So the basic premise of this, I'm just going to read off of IMDb. A pilot finds himself caught in a war zone after he's forced to land his commercial aircraft during a terrible storm. And so this is directed by Jean-François Richet. Probably butchered that name, but it's French, so whatever. I guess it goes without saying that I did not have very high expectations for this film. It was one of those things where it's like, well, there's 2 movies I want to watch in theaters anyway. Why don't we just try a third one, just in case. My boyfriend had mentioned Plane as if he maybe wanted to see it. And so I was like, okay, well, let's fucking watch Plane. So that was our first movie of the day. It was better than I was expecting it to be. I was expecting it to be kind of silly bad. And it was very funny and silly bad. But there were a few things that I respected about it. It didn't feel lazy. It didn't feel like way too cynically made. It felt like the person making it was actually trying in some sense, even if not everything that they did worked. The movie's an hour and 47 minutes, and I was not bored the entire time. It was not a boring movie. It was fairly well paced in the sense that things were continuously moving along. It almost moved too fast in some sense. When the plane crashes, that whole sequence of all the things that are taking place for the plane to crash and the plane actually crashing, it feels like it happens like way faster than it should. And I don't know if that's maybe just because I've never been in a plane crash, but it felt like kind of like an editing issue. It felt like things were just kind of like weirdly rushed. But, can't really complain too much about it because I wasn't bored. It didn't feel, stretched out. It didn't really feel, bloated. So basically, he's flying a convict, no, this is not Con Air, and a bunch of other regular civilian passengers. And they've all got these kind of stereotypical, exaggerated character traits. One of them is just like, he's got a bunch of wet wipes on his chair and he's just complaining the whole time, like, I don't even remember a line, but his purpose was just to kind of be annoying and kind of like a beta male. Weirdly enough, there was some audio peaking during the film. I don't know why that happened. I think that was during the plane crash scene. So this movie was very much stupid, but it wasn't particularly annoying in how it was stupid. It was more just silly and funny, and I was like, oh, okay, that's dumb. But I wasn't mad at the movie. Again, it didn't feel like it was made for cynical reasons, at least from the perspective of the director. It seemed like there were some people there that were trying to make art in some way, even if it's not great art. As much as they were making attempts and not necessarily succeeding with each attempt, it's not like they were pathetic, like a lot of movies feel when they attempt something. It's not like it was embarrassing watching them try to do things. There was even a oneer in an action scene. It was a pretty basic action scene, just 2 people in close physical combat with each other. It wasn't like the Raid Redemption, it wasn't like insanely well choreographed. It was pretty basic, but it was decently choreographed enough, and I was like, oh, it's comprehensible, which is saying a lot, really. It's always kind of been an issue with big budget action movies. I'm going to assume this was a big budget. It seemed like it. It's got Gerard Butler and there was explosions and blah, 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 blah. It's always been an issue with people filming action in the laziest ways possible. And in doing so, it turns out to be incomprehensible. So you just have like, oh, we're going to get a close shot of this action, and then we're going to get a close shot of this other action, and then you just edit them all together, and it's just like, bam, bam, bam. So many cuts. It's all so close. You can't tell what's happening, and you have to wonder, is that the goal with a lot of these action movies? Is it the goal that I can't tell what's happening? That didn't happen in this film, and so I respect it for that. It seems crazy that the bar is so low where it's like, oh, the action was comprehensible, and that's something respectable about like a modern action movie that has Gerard Butler in it by somebody that I'm not familiar with too much directing. But it is something commendable. I like to see more action movies that actually have comprehensible action. It seems like it should be the standard, and yet there's a lot of movies that just don't do that. So yeah, not particularly amazing action, but respectable and not pathetic. It was silly and dumb, but not lazy. The music was also not annoying, which is also saying a lot. You know, all of the things that I was expecting to get really, really pissed off by watching a movie like Plane, just based on the advertisements and just, you know, the poster and the type of movie that it's presenting itself as, I was sure I was going to be really annoyed by a few things. I thought for sure it was going to have like the worst, you know, most bland music ever. And it wasn't particularly unique. It wasn't amazing music, but it wasn't annoying. It worked for the most part. It was serviceable for what the film was. Another thing that really helped this movie is that it was rated R. So when things were happening, when there was violence, it was like, oh, there's actual consequence to the violence. Oh, things are actually happening in a way where I can believe that maybe a character can die or someone's in danger. In PG-13 movies, you know, you're just going to imply something off screen and then it's not going to be that intense or whatever. Like, it's just, I don't know why I'm watching for a lot of them. It's not the case with every PG-13 movie, obviously, but I was pretty positive on this movie for the first 2 out of 3 acts. When I say pretty positive, I don't mean like, oh yeah, way up there. It was always kind of like sitting at a 6. And then the last act was just kind of unsatisfying. And again, it wasn't embarrassing. It wasn't like, oh wow, this is pathetic. It just felt like too indistinguishable from any other shooty shoot action movie. The first 2 acts of this movie, it was like plane crash, close quarters combat, and like some drama and, you know, Gerard Butler like trying to find a phone and all that shit. The third act of the movie is just a lot of mindless, like, pow, pow, pew, 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 shooty shoots shit that I'm not as interested in. It just seems so mindless, and I just zone out to it. It doesn't do anything for me. I don't know if it's just because I'm not a United States citizen. I don't know if Americans love it. It's just not for me. I don't know what I'm supposed to get out of it when it's just like pew pew. Everyone's, you know, guns, woo. I don't relate to it. So we interrupt your regularly scheduled Adam for an emergency Adam. I just wanted to add to this as I'm going over this editing. I rewatched the first half of The Raid Redemption last night, and I came to the conclusion that I am not inherently against any kind of shooty shoot firearms scenes. It's just that in a movie like Plane, it just feels so tame. Watching The Raid Redemption again, and I'll finish the rest of it probably later tonight. There's some actual consequence to the shooting sections. It's gory, it's horrific, it's, you know, maybe not perfect, maybe not like 100% accurate to people getting shot in real life sort of thing, but it feels so much more engaging and brutal, and I'm not as much of a fan of the way that they handled it in Plane, which just felt like they were kind of padding the rest of the movie, and because they had guns and they were shooting, that it was inherently supposed to be entertaining when there really just wasn't any interesting way in which they presented it. So anyway, back to your regularly scheduled Adam. Oh, here's another note. The plane, in the exterior shots of the plane, it shifted direction so quickly. Like, when it turned, it would be like, woo! Or like, when it descends, it goes so fast, which is weird. You'd expect it to go slower just because of, I don't know, the scale of it. That was weird. Should you rent it or watch it at the movies? I don't know. If you want to laugh with some friends, either way, honestly. I don't think I have a strong recommendation either way. I think that it's a perfectly fine movie to watch. I think it's like a decent dad movie, if we want to call it that. Just, yeah, the third act was not that satisfying. I wanted to see something a bit crazier, a bit more purposeful in terms of its action and what was happening. Just the mindless shooty shoot shit. You could pick it out of any other movie and it just fits right in. Like, it doesn't need to be there, or just add more to it. I don't know. I couldn't get into the shooty shoot. There were also some really kind of sappy, quote-unquote emotional scenes near the end of the movie in particular that were pretty hilarious. There are some fun parts to laugh at. One of the characters is like, hope this layover is better than the last one. And like just the sad music. And it doesn't last too long. It didn't make me hate the movie or anything, but it was something to laugh at. I was enjoying just ironically watching the movie. Yeah, surpassed my expectations. It's not a lazy movie. It's not cynically made. Well, maybe it is. I don't know. But they managed to pull it off in some way. It was not bad. I'm giving this one a 5 out of 10. It's a high 5. High 5! Yeah, no, it's not a low 5. It was perfectly fine. It's closer to a 6 than a 4, but it's still a 5. Thank you. All right, so now we're talking about Missing, the 2023 Missing. This is the sequel to the film Searching, which starred John Cho, and it was a nice little kind of indie movie where it's a thriller, and there was kind of like a mystery of someone, John Cho is searching for a family member, and they're using the internet, and you can see on the computer screen, the whole movie's through a computer screen, like Unfriended, except not terrible. Searching, I believe I gave a 7. It's a very respectable movie that was in 2018. There's a lot I like about it. There's tons of, twists and turns, and it's always keeping you on your feet, and the story makes a lot of sense, I think. Even if not every bit of it is perfect and some parts are cheesy, whatever. I have a review for that on my channel, I think, somewhere. So this is the sequel called Missing. And it's a sequel in the sense that it's the same style and mostly the same concept, but it has different characters. And so this one stars Storm Reed, you might recognize from, I think, Euphoria. Let's just double check that. Yeah, they're from Euphoria, and also apparently A Wrinkle in Time, which is one of the worst movies in a long time. I saw the trailer for this film and I thought, wow, her performance does not look great, and I might be annoyed watching this movie. And I watched it, and I think the trailer made her look a little bit worse than she feels in the context of the movie. I feel like the way it's presented in the film, she is just fine. I don't know if this is like partially due to the director or if it's just the actor herself, but she was serviceable for the film, but still teetering on the edge of believable or not believable. It's almost kind of like a Rorschach test where it's like, okay, well, if you, or maybe like hypnosis, I don't know what kind of analogy we want to use, but like if you're willing to believe the performance, you will, sort of thing. It's difficult to describe. She's not amazing, but I think she works just fine for the film. Also, pretty young actor. What's her age again? Born in 2003. They're 20 now. Jesus. So I guess, yeah, they were 18 or 19 when they were filming this. So I haven't seen the first movie recently, but I have seen it multiple times, enough to know that I do very much enjoy it and respect it. Watching this film, it's not from the same director. Nicholas D. Johnson edited Searching, and also the other director edited Searching. So literally both of the editors from the first film are now directing this film, which makes sense because it's a very editing heavy movie. You have a good comprehension of what types of shots you'll need to create the film if you especially edited the first film. I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea to have the editors from the first film directing this movie. I think perhaps maybe the acting might have been better if we still had, who directed the first film? Like Angish, and I'm not gonna try to butcher that name until I've at least seen it on the screen. Give me 1 second here. Anish Chaganty. Now I've butchered the name. Good. So yeah, the first film directed by Anish Chaganty. And I feel like, I don't know, John Cho is probably just a better actor anyway, better actor independent of the directors. I like John Cho a bit. I think he's been pretty good. The story's pretty good. I prefer the story in the original film. You don't need to watch the original film to watch this. It's completely different characters, different story. I would say watch the first film first anyway, because that's just the better film. And if you like that one a lot, then you can watch this one. It felt like they were kind of reaching for twists in this film. It felt like they were kind of stretching to include twists or fake outs or, just to keep you on your toes sort of thing, which, is fun. It can be fun. A lot of people seem to enjoy it. My boyfriend enjoyed it as well. I felt like the inclusion of these twists and fake outs made a lot more sense in the first film. I found myself rolling my eyes a couple times in this movie of just like, oh, okay. Parts of it did feel kind of dumb. There aren't as good excuses for justifying A, the story, and B, especially how we're seeing the images on screen. In the first film, I felt like there was always a much more proper justification for the format in which we're seeing the images on the screen, because remember, it's all through the computer screen. Whereas, I don't know if this is really a spoiler, but in this film, it literally just gets to the point of like, oh, everything in this house, just there's a home security system. I mean, they do kind of explain why it's there, but it's not like that well justified. It's just kind of like this convenience of like, oh, okay, we get to see it this way now. So yeah, it felt kind of silly at points in that sense. Yeah, there were some weird kind of cringe attempts at dramatic moments in this film. Like, no, you didn't give up on your son. And just like trying to force in these sort of like pull on your heartstrings emotional beats that are just kind of cliched and just feel a little bit annoying. But despite that, I think that it did work overall. Those types of things didn't fill up the majority of time in the movie. It didn't feel like the most of the movie was, eye-rolling. For the most part, it was pretty engaging. I think that also a lot of the reason why I was engaged in the film is because of just the presentation and the editing and the music. The directors are editors. They edited the first film. It is very well edited, although I will say almost too much at points. Not too much well edited, but like too much editing. So you can see the entire frame of the screen at points in the film, and then there will be cropped versions where it's like, okay, well, you're only supposed to be focusing on this corner of the screen because that's where a character's face is or something like that. I felt like it happened too many times. It was like a little too obvious of like, I'm almost kind of searching for something where the viewer can just look at a part of the screen naturally and experience it that way. It felt like it was holding the audience's hand a bit too much. Not saying get rid of that completely. It's not a Michelle Haneke film. This isn't Cachet. Don't get rid of that completely, but it did feel like it was like pushing a bit too much. And also, the use of music. And I liked the music despite it being like fairly derivative. I think that for the most part, it helped to accentuate the emotions in the film. And, the film probably wouldn't be as good without the music at all. But I do gotta say, that main theme that they played is pretty fucking reminiscent of the Interstellar theme to a very, very, very close degree. It's a dramatic chord progression. And it works, and it helps you to feel the drama. But at the same time, it is very, very similar. And it's such an iconic theme. Like, more people know the Interstellar music than have seen the film Interstellar. Like, it's a pretty iconic score. It's like in meme culture right now, right? So especially when you're making a movie about the internet, I don't know if it's that good of an idea to have a score be so similar, There's like one note that was different, really. But it was the exact same chord progression, the exact same emotions, the exact same feel and experience as parts of the Interstellar soundtrack. So that was a bit distracting. The rest of the music worked fine, though. I didn't think that there was anything wrong with like the tone of the music. A lot of it really helped you get a sense of energy when you're watching the character like figure out all the clues and like, oh, there's a new piece of information, and it gets you like kind of hyped up. So the music worked in that sense. But yeah, it's a little too similar to Interstellar. And also, yeah, they had a good comprehension of internet culture and websites and what websites or services are capable of doing like what things, for the most part. I think that there was maybe a couple things where I was like, did they have that feature in 2008? I don't think that they had a native trim end of video feature in 2008 Windows Movie Player built into the... I don't think they had that. I do not think they had that. So yeah, in the 2008 scenes, most of the movie is set like fairly recently. Some of the movies set in 2008, and during those scenes I was like, I don't think that they had that. But otherwise, the movie worked fine in that sort of like, I guess, logical sense. So I think that at a certain point in the film, I noticed for a second, I don't know if any of you who have watched the film noticed this as well, but I'm pretty sure there was a brief cameo appearance of Michael Tucker, the creator of a YouTube channel called Lessons from the Screenplay, who is apparently I'm reading in their bio, working with BioWare on the next installment of Mass Effect, which is really cool. Lessons from the screenplay, 1.47 million subscribers on YouTube. Good videos, respectable, great videos, I would even say. Great stuff, good substantive film commentary. I swear, when one of the characters was checking Twitter and they were like scrolling down, seeing replies, I swear I saw Michael Tucker's photo in one of the little bubbles for Twitter. I'm going to have to DM them and see if that was the case. Let's see if they respond while I'm doing this review. It's got a pretty good sense of humor. It's not always an entirely logical film, you know, like they wrote into the screenplay that the main character has like a rager, like a party, like, oh, gets so drunk that they throw up. And then like the next day they're like, oh, I'm picking up my parents at the airport. But she doesn't act hungover. She doesn't act like she was literally vomiting the night before hungover. The character is just kind of like fine. And like, you know, they decide like, oh, I'm even going to pull a prank. Like, they have a lot more energy than you would if you were that hungover. Like, it's one of those things where it's like, they would probably stay in bed. They would probably not be safe to drive, maybe. That felt a little strange. Okay, Michael Tucker confirmed. I was right. I noticed Michael Tucker's cameo. This movie, worth watching for sure. I enjoyed myself, my experience watching it. There were good performances to a degree. It was believable enough for the movie. There were parts that were stupid. Some parts felt annoying, I guess, but just it was a relatively enjoyable, inoffensive experience. And it did have the same spirit as the first film. It didn't feel so far removed that it's like, oh, this is a bastardization of the first film. And the first film wasn't like a masterpiece in the first place anyway. I felt that more or less this offered relatively a similar enough experience to the first film that fans of the first film would not be disappointed by this movie, I feel. And that's, I feel like, a pretty good accomplishment if you're making a sequel to another movie. I feel like that's more or less the goal. And I'm giving this one a high 5 out of 10. It's another high 5, not a low 5. It's another 5, closer to a 6 than a 4. Out of 10, it was just fine. My boyfriend would give it a 6, is what he said. I think he said maybe even a 7. I think he liked it like quite a bit, actually. He hasn't seen the original, though, so now I want to show him that. The third film we saw that day was Infinity Poo, Pooping Back and Forth Forever, directed by Brandon Cronenberg, good old Brandy Cronenberg, son of very famous, very iconic horror director David Cronenberg. The name almost escaped me for no reason. So famous that in the now forbidden show Rick and Morty, they had an entire episode where they were like, we're Cronenbergs, Morty. Hey, Morty, we're Cronenbergs. Hire me to replace Justin Roiland. I'm the best, obviously, at this. David Cronenberg is still making movies. They're not good. Some people like them. I don't. And so at this point in time, I feel like the types of films that Brandon Cronenberg is making are what David Cronenberg should be making in terms of like quality and what they are. Like it's what I would expect out of David Cronenberg past his prime. But David Cronenberg is making films, I guess, worse than that. And Brandon, he's not that talented. Like I've never even been like that crazy of a fan of David Cronenberg. There's movies that I really love from him. Like, I think Naked Lunch is a Cronenberg. I love Naked Lunch. I think that movie is fantastic. Pretty insane adaptation of like a novel that would otherwise seem impossible to adapt. So I tried watching Antiviral at one point, apparently. Did I finish it? I have no idea, but I gave it a 5. I watched Possessor. I saw that in theaters. I did finish it. There's a review for it on my channel. Wasn't a huge fan of it. Would I recommend Infinity Poo to someone that liked Possessor? 100%. There's definitely a market for these Brandon Cronenberg films, and there's people that enjoy them, and there's nothing wrong with that. I just feel like they're kind of tame, and they don't have enough going for me in any direction that I would really want out of a horror movie. It has some level of personality to it, but in terms of the personality that it's offering, it feels like it's only on technicality. whether it be the framing and cinematography, or the editing and the trippy sequences, or the gore, or the plot conceptually, or like the moral, ethical dilemmas arising from the plot, or the themes, or how it explores the characters. Every single one of these, it does these things on a technicality. And what I mean by that is it doesn't properly explore or delve into any one of these aspects. And it's just teasing at these things where I'm like, oh, fuck, this is a really interesting concept. And then they don't do much with it. And the reason why I just installed Soma on my other PC is because watching this film, Infinity Poo, it just made me want to play Soma, because I was like, damn, I remember, spoiler discussion now, not for Soma, but for Infinity Pool. I guess mild spoilers for Soma, but not really. Soma explores the concept of clones and the ethical and philosophical dilemmas associated with that in a much more substantive way than Infinity Poo does. The acting was pretty good. The Mia Goth, she does a great job. There's parts near the end of the movie where I don't know if I can call it a bad performance. I think just what her character was doing was so annoying that I was just kind of off-put by it. You know how I really hate Harley Quinn in Suicide Squad, and I just find her just irritating, like ear rape? It's like that. That was basically happening in the last third of this movie, where I guess she wasn't technically doing a bad job performing the character, but what was being shown was just so irritating that I was just like, please stop. And by that point, I was so not invested in the movie anyway. And it's probably a good thing that I wasn't super invested in the movie, because there was an old woman that was just talking the entire time behind us. So by the end of the movie, I was like, damn, that would have sucked if I was really into this. There was barely anybody in the theater, and she was talking to her husband. She had a full bottle of wine. She was sloshed. Every time somebody said something in the movie, she'd be like, what? And then he'd have to explain really basic things about things that had just happened. Spoiler discussion for Infinity Poo. He'd be like, no, that's a clone. They're cloning them. That was the other thing. Every single time the husband would have to explain something to the woman they were both pretty sloshed. I don't know if they were boomers. They might have been Gen Xers. I don't know. Age is important so we can discriminate and form biases in our mind against entire groups of people and generalize them. Satire. The first two movies I saw, being plain and missing, I had such low expectations for, and I thought that I would hate them, and they turned out to be all right. And so I was left with kind of a positive feeling. Infinity Poo is it's getting all these rave reviews, and I don't know if it's just because the name Cronenberg's on it. People said this about Possessor, and Possessor was so lame. I think that this is probably his best movie. I think that this was probably the one that I enjoyed the most out of everything I've seen from Brandy Cronenberg. But fuck, it was just so held back in every sense. The trippy sequences were not that trippy. The editing was not that crazy in them, and it felt like it was supposed to be. It felt like we were supposed to feel that from that. The moral and ethical dilemmas, it's just it didn't explore it properly. And here's what I mean by that. So there are scenes in the film where the main character that we're following gets sort of caught up in this idea of, oh, we got no consequences because the government will just clone us and put to death our clone. And so he's in a group of people where they're like, yeah, that means that this country is our playground. It's, it was like a Black Mirror episode, and I feel like it would have honestly been better as an hour-long Black Mirror episode. And watching that, I was just thinking fuck, if you had established this character as a good person, or a relatable, ethical, nice guy before this point, then it would have some weight when he turns into an asshole. But he was kind of just already an asshole from the beginning of the movie. He was kind of already nah, we'll just go, not respecting the boundaries of his partner, and, kind of full of himself, There wasn't enough contrast between him before the initial incident of the movie turning him into this, more extreme, less moral character. And the exact same thing happens in relation to his relationship with his, I guess, wife, where she's going through a crisis because he is wanting to stay back and he lost his passport, and he's just now doing drugs and hanging out with these people and like killing people and all that shit. And he's like, oh yeah, I'm just enjoying all this, blah, 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 blah. And she's having this, who are you sort of revelation where her world is shattered because her husband is doing this. They didn't really explore or develop their relationship before that point. It's just kind of implied, which is kind of annoying, right? It's like this film is just afraid to show us something like real, which, it just reminds me of every other modern horror movie. I was saying this in my Hellraiser 2022 review about how much I am itching for horror movies that aren't afraid to show real emotions. Like, I shouldn't be watching a horror movie and feeling like the movie itself is afraid. Like, I want to be afraid. I don't feel like I should be watching a horror movie that feels afraid. And so when you don't properly develop their relationship and we don't get like any sort of sense for how much they love each other other than just like, oh, well, they're married, so they must love each other. Like these givens or these just things that you're supposed to assume about these characters without actually showing it. It doesn't mean as much. It doesn't mean as much when you take something away in that sense. It's like the whole, who are you? Like, I don't feel anything from it because you didn't give us any reason to A, care about and empathize with the main character beforehand, and B, care about their relationship. Like, what did they have together? It's just so surface level, and you kind of just have to make it up in your head without much help from the film at all. It's really not properly developed outside of just like, oh, well, they're married, and so all married people love each other, I guess. I don't even remember if they were actually married or just boyfriend and girlfriend. It's beside the point. Whatever relationship they were supposed to have would have been so much more effective to decimate the relationship if we had just gotten some more exploration of his character. I feel like we just didn't get much at all. He was kind of this general, don't care about him sort of asshole, almost to a degree where they're a blank slate. And this happens in so many fucking modern horror movies where, oh no, the main character's an asshole and he's getting his comeuppance, but he's not an asshole in an interesting way. He's just kind of like, okay, why should I care about this character? It can be compelling for a character to be unlikable or unrelatable. Patrick Bateman, American Psycho, obvious example. That's done so in a compelling way where it's fun to think about their sociopathy. But this was just like, they forgot to develop it in any particular direction. They didn't care enough about the character for the character to actually mean something in the context of the film. They're merely just a placeholder to explore, but not really, the plot and concept of the film. The music in the film was decent. It was often derivative. It often just felt like other pieces of music. Out of every movie I watched that day, it probably felt the slowest and most repetitive. It technically has a lot of the same ingredients as what you would find in a really great, compelling film, but the chef just needs some work, I don't feel like he's a terrible director. I don't feel like he's only ever going to make movies that don't connect with me, which is why I was kind of disappointed by this one, because I thought, like, for sure this would be the time. I thought for sure, like, okay, yeah, Infinity Pool, this is the one. I'm going to watch this movie and I'm going to really connect with it and enjoy it. It's getting, great reviews. Now I'm realizing it has the exact same Metascore as Possessor. So maybe I'll have to wait for something with like an 80 Metascore or something, not 72, if I'm really going to connect with it. But yeah, it didn't really have a lot to say. And I think this is a quote from the film. It didn't really have a lot to say, and it lacked the words to say it. There's ingredients there, and a talented chef can make a really great meal out of those ingredients. But you just didn't know how to cook them. It's unfortunate. For me, anyway. I know a lot of people are going to enjoy this movie. Don't not check it out just because I wasn't connected with it, I guess, unless every movie that you watch, you feel like your tastes align so closely with mine that it's not worth trying to see movies that I don't connect with. Yeah, not really much else to say about Infinity Poo. It's not terrible. I'm only saying Infinity Poo as a joke just because it's funny. Yeah, check it out if you want. I gave the previous two films high fives. I'm giving this one just a solid 5. A solid 5. It's not even a high 5 for me. I was just frustrated by the end of it. I just wanted it to end. I found myself the least entertained by that film out of all the ones that I saw that day. And even though there's parts of the recipe where I'm like, oh, there's talent there, or that's something that belongs in a good film. It wasn't properly realized. It wasn't great in the presentation. Not more to say about it. Sorry. 5 out of 10. Thank you. When we got back from the theater, my boyfriend wanted to watch John Wick because he had seen it and wanted to watch the sequels with me. And I, from memory, didn't watch the first movie, but there was an IMDb rating on my profile from it. So I know that I at least tried to watch parts of it. Maybe I did watch the whole thing. I don't really know if I watched the whole thing before. And even after watching it this time, I'm still not sure. Parts throughout the film, all the way up until the end, felt familiar. It felt like I had seen a lot of the things. Like, I have no idea if I have seen this movie before. I've at least seen parts of it before. So this was my first time, maybe second, maybe third, watching it all the way through, which is not really a great, it means it didn't connect with me like a whole lot if I don't even know if I've seen it before. And I don't hate John Wick. And this is another one that's going to piss some people off, I know. It's just the way that people talk about it, and I know that this shouldn't influence my feeling of the film, but it did set up like this weird sort of sense of expectations, especially when it was starting to become popular. People talk about it as if it's this like, oh yeah, it's an action movie that only cares about the action and it doesn't take itself too seriously. I remember the first time I tried watching it, I was like, okay, well the first 20 minutes is like, oh, he's so sad because his dog died. Spoilers for John Wick. I think everybody knows that about the movie, right? It's literally in the IMDb description, so whatever. And the way that they handle it, it's like Keanu Reeves is not that great of an actor. He works fine for this film. I get it. He's this stoic sort of, I don't know, man with no name, man of few words or whatever. We're not going to see him, I guess, break down and cry per se. But I just found like the editing and the music going along with that scene just kind of like obnoxious and insistent. And so when people recommend John Wick, and I will watch the sequels, and I'm expecting to connect with the sequels a bit more, because maybe they go further into the wackiness, which I would love. Watching this original film halfway through the movie, and it's still like not a single wacky thing has happened other than like some of the fight scenes are like cool. It wasn't until over halfway through the film when he was having a fight scene with the female assassin where the music was like, oh, kind of like campy and like a bit more upbeat and like, oh, you're not supposed to be taking this one as seriously, which is weird because it's like the first like, oh, he's fighting a girl sort of thing. So I mean, that's kind of a weird moment to be like the only part of the film that you can pick out where it's like, oh, this doesn't take itself like way too seriously. And what I mean by that when I say not taking itself too seriously is it's not without its campy nature, but it doesn't necessarily feel all that intentional in this first movie. My understanding is that it leans into and wears its campiness as a badge of honor more in the sequels, which I'm excited for. If I want an action movie where they just care about the action and they don't have all this bullshit in between of like, you're supposed to respect him because he's so cool and the assassin and, we're playing Marilyn Manson and yeah, so you don't have to kill your ones you love, blah, blah, blah. And like, just, if I want an action movie that doesn't have that, I'll watch Crank. And Crank 1 and 2 are perfect for me in terms of what they offer, pacing-wise and action-wise. Sure, it's not, the level of coordination when it comes to the stunts are not as impressive in terms of like a fight choreography when it comes to Crank compared to John Wick. But I feel like it just doesn't waste any time. I feel like Crank is like a no bullshit movie. And the fact that people were trying to sell John Wick to me as that when I already have Crank and this doesn't do that, I wasn't too keen on it. So John Wick kind of exists as this movie where it's not super far in terms of the direction of not taking itself seriously. It's got like hints of that, but that's not really what I'm looking for if I want to watch a movie like that. And it's also not too far in the direction of like action that I love. Again, it's got hints of it. There's some cool parts where I'm like, oh yeah, there's some close combat and it's mostly comprehensible and like pretty well shot for action scenes. But, I'm kind of watching the movie being like, oh fuck, we should be watching The Raid. The Raid Redemption, you know, like that's some crazy action right there. I love the action in The Raid Redemption and The Raid 2. I hope there's a third Raid movie coming at some point. Those films take themselves relatively seriously in the same way that John Wick does, but the action is just so much more incredibly coordinated and so impressive, and just like, holy shit, it feels like you're watching like Cirque du Soleil watching those movies. And so yeah, John Wick doesn't go far enough in any direction to have me super interested or engaged. It was a fine experience. I wasn't really bored. The weird subtitles, I don't know if that was supposed to be a level of like comedic self-awareness of like, oh, see, we're not like a super serious movie, because in the context of the film, it felt like it was just trying to look cool. In the context of the film, the weird subtitle style that they were using throughout the film just felt like it was trying to be cool. It didn't really feel like it was like, oh yeah, this is directly campy. Like I don't know if people interpreted it that way, but it felt like it was trying to be cool. Yeah, without those subtitles, I guess even with them, like it feels like this movie is fairly straightforward and unironic and not trying to be like a comedy. It's just it's action focused, and some of the action is like kind of, I don't know if wacky's the right word, but like, you know, over the top. Let's just say over the top. Some of the action's over the top. Yeah, most of it just feels like serious, unironic emotions that I'm supposed to be getting out of it that I don't really quite get out of it. Yeah, the female assassin actor was not very good. Keanu Reeves was not bad for this movie. Wasn't really required to do a whole lot of range, so it worked well. The unironic, quote-unquote, cool factor was a bit difficult to get into at parts. There were a couple laugh-out-loud funny moments that I don't think the film was intending. Like when the mob boss is like, oh yeah, you're dead now, John Wick. And then the henchman put the bag over his head, the plastic bag over his head, is like, oh, we're going to suffocate you. And the mob boss just like leaves immediately. Not like, he's not going to watch him die, just like, whoop, just immediately turns around and leaves. I'm like, okay, I guess that has to happen just because, you know, Keanu is obviously going to not die. And yeah, Willem Dafoe's great. I love Willem. Not his best role or anything, but, you know, he's always just a joy to see in a movie. I like movies more that have Willems in it. I love... Spoilers. I love how they handled the Russian son's death, because that really felt like that was the main goal of Keanu Reeves' character. And I love how unceremoniously they handled his death. It was just kind of like walk up to him like, bam. And it wasn't like this like, oh, you'll never get me, and like fall into a chasm. It was just kind of like headshot, like you're done. I liked that about it. I thought that was a good choice. Oh God, there was when the female assassin gets assassinated, everyone was standing in like four corners basically, and she was in the center. And they're like four people coordinated with each other with guns shooting at the center. And all I'm like is like, you're within each other's line of fire right now. Like, I just laughed at that part. I was like, really? Like, you're gonna shoot each other? Like, what are you doing? That's not. There's a reason why when you're getting like sentenced to death by firing squad that you're up against a wall. It's so that other people that you're not trying to kill aren't within the line of fire. So that was very silly. That was very funny. I was just like, okay, I guess that's supposed to look cool or something. Just like, we're in a circle killing her. Like, that was absolutely bizarre. That's the most stupid way you could possibly assassinate someone. Yeah, didn't hate the movie, just didn't connect with it a whole lot. It's not offering enough in terms of action or self-awareness for me to be in love with it. But I will be watching the sequels now because my boyfriend's interested in watching them, and I can spend time with him and get reviewing stuff done at the same time. 5 out of 10. So my rating did not change from... Maybe I watched the whole thing and gave it a 5 the first watch, but I definitely watched the whole thing this time. And my rating did not change. Yeah, it's a 5. It's fine. I'm fine with it. We'll see how the rest of it is. Thank you. Stay tuned. I'm going to be reviewing some Sundance movies. I was watching a bunch of Sundance movies yesterday and the day before and the day before that. I've been very busy. I've been very busy with Sundance stuff, so I'll review those later. Right now, I'm going to do some other stuff. Thank you so much. And what about Kat's behavior is upsetting you? The way she dresses. Oh. I'm not talking to No! Ew!